Manager IoT Partner of the Year. So we do quite a bit outside of automotive. So Harman acquired Symphony Teleca as well as Red Bend, who does over-the-air update technologies, just because obviously the software and services space is first something new to automotive, but second, everly so important to the connected and autonomous space. So my name is Kyle Walworth. I'm Vice President of Automotive Solutions and Strategy for Roundtable Services.
Thank you. So my name is Håkan Sivencrona. I work for Delphi EC, Electronics and Control in Sweden. And I work as a safety manager and also I've been representing Delphi for like 10 years in the ISO 262626262 standardization. I never know when to stop. And I'm also in production projects and designing safety concept for ADAS and AD. And also wanted to remind you, if you can move closer, it will be even more cozier for us to have this discussion later on. Please.
Hello, my name is Jeff Hutton and I'm from Synopsys. We're an EDA company. What we do is we help a lot of the tier 2 semiconductors, companies develop these semiconductors, so we help them design them, test them, and verify them. And we're doing a lot of work, what I do in the company, do a lot of work with the new emerging automotive suppliers and the existing automotive suppliers on how do we build, test, and validate these very large new electronic systems that are being put into cars that are going to be doing things like self-driving.
Hello, my name is K Jeffries. I'm with Bridgestone here in the Americas. Our organization is very vertically integrated, so we have a lot of exposure in the future mobility. So me and my partner are here just kind of trying to learn a little bit more about what's happening. I also do a lot of business intelligence for the company at a global level, and just here to try to understand a little bit more about what the future mobility is going to look like.
Thank you. So we have a few bullets with areas that we think contribute to what could inhibit the introduction of autonomous. But feel free to come up with any other topic, of course, that can inhibit this. I mean, we have like 10 bullets, everything from supply chain, relationship, ecosystem, down to hardware and BOM cost. So we will grasp this microphone and try to elaborate a little on these, and feel free to interrupt or come up with other questions. But I wonder, I mean, since you're with General Motors, what do you see as the most, what should I say, impacting argument not to introduce it?
Not to introduce it? I don't see an argument not to introduce it. We are going to introduce it. I think Mary Barr announced it would be model year 17 a vehicle, so we will have something for Super Cruise out there for the public to purchase. And it's an exciting system for the highway, so hands-free, feet-free, pedal-free. So we're looking forward to showing that to the world. And there's any standard of things. You know, there's always a liability in that, but we have that at work. Doesn't matter. We're going to have liability no matter what we introduce. Somebody's going to come and try to sue. So we're just going to continue developing the best products we can and making sure they're safe for our customers.
So I'm of course not an OEM, a tier 1, but not to introduce. I think one of the topics we're talking about is inhibitors on introducing, and from tier 1 perspective, this is a very different beast from a sourcing perspective. There's not necessarily a piece of hardware that equates to autonomous vehicle, right, other than the vehicles. There are a lot of services, but how do you then, as a tier 1, sell into all of your services into an OEM? And it's a very complicated chain where you don't know who really owns the autonomous vehicle. Is it engineering? Is it the back-end connected services, the IT group, et cetera, et cetera? So there are many different groups that you need to go out and touch. So I think one of the big inhibitors is how do you make the whole equation understandable in a traditional automotive sense? It's not an easy answer.
So any thoughts on the inhibitors, major inhibitors for you?
Well, I'll start by saying I agree with Kenneth. I mean, there's really no reason not to move forward with this. I think the statistics have shown undoubtedly that it's much safer for society, and there's going to be way more benefits than there will be negatives. There are a lot of inhibitors that are out there. Obviously, I think the biggest one that comes up all the time is legislation. Who's at fault? I mean, that's always kind of the American program, right? Who can I blame? So that's going to be a big challenge. From a tier 1 perspective, Bridgestone, and I had a previous mention that we're very vertically integrated. So, and a lot of the OEMs are as well, and that in itself really puts us all at a lot of exposure. So no matter what path is taken with the mobility, there's going to be disruptions in our business model. So that, that's challenging for all of us to understand. What is it going to do to my business model? How is that going to impact me? Am I going to be able to branch horizontally to another revenue stream? The distribution of revenues, where it's going to, what is it going to look like in the future? So those are the questions that I guess keep the executives awake, right? From the inhibitors as far as challenges to get an adoption rate. I believe Cal, the consumer understanding it. We were talking earlier about how do you prove it's safe. I think earlier today Gary was talking about how do you give it a 5-star? How's mine better than yours? And right now I think the only thing we have is Google's 500,000 model test without accident, right? So we were talking about it at lunch a little bit, is to put that into perspective, 500,000 miles of autonomous driving is 0.2% of the miles driven in the United States right now. So that's a pretty low sample size. So, how do you convince the consumer, okay, it's okay to not worry about holding on the steering wheel. Don't worry about it, it's going to get you there safe. That's going to be a big hurdle. Because ultimately, they're the ones buying the vehicle.
I guess from our perspective, one of the things that the inhibitors are, how do you prove it's safe? And have you done enough proof? Because there's almost a limitless amount of things that you could possibly test, scenarios that you could test. And I guarantee you, with the complexity of an automobile, with all the mechanical and the electronics and the software systems, if you took just the pure number of faults that you could come up with, you could not test them all. So what's good enough? Where do we stop? And then I think that's the biggest inhibitor. Can we convince the public that that's a good point, and then put legal things in place that say, look, you did do enough, and some of your responsibility. You're not going to lose your company, for example, because there was a problem. So I think those are the inhibitors. It's going to be interesting to see how we as an industry come up with this. What amount of testing is enough? How safe did we get? And is that good enough? And should we release product? I think that's what we're all going to be tested on at every single layer.
Okay, I think you don't have my list here, but I think we actually touched all bullets here. But we were discussing laws, liability, and regulations, and I mean we know that Toyota had a case where they had a litigation. It was quite costly, and do you see something similar going to happen here with the autonomous vehicle? Under what circumstances could it happen?
We see litigation all the time that we have, when people come, they're like, hey, they have deep pockets. So we expect this to be no different than whether it be key fobs or anything else. We expect there will be litigation. One of the things that maybe would be good to go over when you get to the bullet points is, what do people expect autonomous vehicles are? What is their, do they think they can check out on these autonomous vehicles, or do they, or is there some that they have to monitor it? Because the first discussion point. We didn't go over that very much, but I think there's a big difference in perception. Some people think I just start this and I can go in the back seat and go to sleep, which General Motors doesn't abide by. And then there are, you obviously there's the continuous monitoring just because it is a new technology. So that might be a good third question. But yeah, as far as liability, anything we put out there, there's always liability. There's always people saying we didn't do enough, we should have done more. And even if we had done more, we still didn't do enough. I think it's driven by, people who are making money off of that. And, maybe at some point there needs to be some tort reform or litigation reform. But that's not anything General Motors is going to be able to drive. So.
What is due diligence then? Would you like to answer that?
I can tell you, I don't know.
We will definitely see some speeches for tomorrow as well on the topic. I remember I had a situation with my Walworth Cat 3 Plus system. I saw the bus coming from left, crossing me on the road, and I felt I can actually pass behind it. The car did not agree. So I know it works, but I think, as you said, people will also try the limits of it, and that can also be something that needs to be education before. Would you like to add something to it?
There's no answer for what is due diligence, but I think one thing that all OEMs will end up doing is, with the connected side of the vehicle, as Larry said, you only drive such a small fraction of, you only test such a small fraction of the situations that come about. So I believe that, with the connection back to off-board servers and analytics in the back end, that first of all, you'll have a lot of probe data out there testing new situations, right? But it's how quickly those vehicles will be able to be updated. Software doesn't fix those vehicles, be updated and mitigate that risk. So potentially from a due diligence perspective, the continuous monitoring, the continuous improvement process can help towards that from a litigation perspective.
I think so too. Please, would you like to comment on this? Rules, regulations? Yeah. Do we have a microphone for you? You will get one.
I was going to posit the fact that probably the largest inhibitor, this would go specifically to your question, what the customers want, is we don't train people to use vehicles. We don't even train people to drive. We teach them rules of the road and then expect that they learn how to drive over time. So what are we going to do about training people to use, whether it's fully autonomous or something? What are we going to do to train them on how to use this? I think there was data from GM, Ford, others, right? Dealers are so pressed they don't have time to train, and even if people wanted to train, people don't have a desire to stay in the dealership much longer than they have to. So how do we train people to use the equipment that we build and put in the vehicle?
That's a hard one.
Well, obviously, you're right. The only training you get when you become a driver is your dad or mom takes you out to the mall parking lot and says, "Okay, this is what you do." So, it's a great question, but there is also a shift in the people that are now driving. I know when I was in business, first thing you always worried about was when you hired a new employee, you had to teach them. I'm going to date myself a little bit. Back in the 80s, you had to teach them how to use the computer, right? It was something you always, okay, is this person going to have the skill to use the computer? Well, now you have the millennials that kind of come along, and I don't believe they require as much training from a technology perspective. They're almost self-training. They seek out this information without being told. And the millennials, as well as, I'm not sure what they call the next generations. I think they're calling them Nexters or something. But they as the new generations shift into the driving sector, I don't believe that the education of how to use the technology behind it is going to be as relevant. And then again, this is my opinion. I think it's, well, I shouldn't say relevant, it's probably not the right word. It's probably not going to need as much effort behind it, because they seem to have this natural instinct to just seek out technology. And that's been my experience with the younger generations.
Well, I mean, you're right, you don't want to be at the dealer any longer than you have to do when you're buying the car. But you do wait there long enough as it is, as you're getting paperwork and whatnot. In this society, you know, everything's about video, YouTube, internet, so, I mean, my son teaches me most of the stuff about the car because I don't open the owner's manual, but he reads it and tells me all these things I have that I have no clue on. So it's just, you're right, the younger generation does get it, but while you're waiting there, you know, a lot of the dealerships have been renovated, and, you know, they have televisions running demonstrations of here's how these types of features work, and I can envision that there might be something to that effect. Okay, here's how your Super Cruise is going to work, and things. It'll show you things about it. A 3-5 minute YouTube video. Here's how it might work. Make a comment to other systems you already have, so people understand what the indications are the same. It's like, oh, this is doing that. So other ones. But there will be some training, and some of it will be the system will be. You're right. Will be indicating to you, you know, here's what it wants. So it's kind of training you along the way. When you first get it, yeah, there's going to be some learning curve. But as with anything you have in life, there's always a learning curve. And I think people will adapt to it quickly. I think they're going to really, when you look at what Super Cruise will have to offer, I think people are going to really enjoy that. That's something to come back to. I mean, a lot of companies are doing good work with this, and that's what's helping to remove those inhibitors. You know, as everybody does that work and we all share in that, I think there's going to be a lot of benefits, especially for an aging population that's losing the ability to drive. And then when we get to the higher level of autonomous vehicles.
I'm going to add one more little thing. John, you always ask the best questions. So I don't have an answer to how we train people, but kind of the opposite of that, or adjacent to that, is learning how they drive. So I can publicly speak about this one because it's been released by JLR onto YouTube, but if you Google the JLR learning car, there's a project that we did with them that we did all of the basically onboard analytics, machine learning algorithms that learn the driver behaviors of the driver acceleration, deceleration patterns, etc. And all of that can be used, of course, to understand potentially overlay that with other data, traffic data, et cetera, to help, you know, the semi-autonomous car understand and react a little bit better. So that's not exactly your answer on training, but it's a great step forward when the car is self-learning.